The path, is it a narrow path, or is there a danger that actually the U.S. overheats, and therefore that would definitely kind of, change market perspective?
Well, it's extremely important. First of all, I agree with Simon on the general perspective. Namely, if we are talking about forecasts, it's very reasonable that we will have about 3 more steps this year. If it is 3 or 4 or 2, it becomes secondary. And similarly for next year, because we are so far away from the historical average. And to me, it's not something that frightens me. As a matter of fact, the U.S. economy is robust now, has recovered, and the U.S. therefore has to lead the way in the normalization. What is important to note, however, is that Federal Reserve normally deals with the short end of the market. That's where it is. The yield curve is the thing that connects the short end with the long end. The long end is not determined by the Fed, and probably in normal times should not be determined by the Fed. It is the budget deficit, it is the growth, it is the uncertainty in the economic system and the like. And therefore, it's time to realize that it's not the center stage anymore. It's not the only game in town anymore. The Fed, normalization means the Fed gets back to the narrow corner where it belongs, setting the short term and let the market do the medium term and the long term.
Dr. Frenkel, let's go back to the classroom in Chicago. We need a lesson now on what a weak dollar means to Chairman Powell. This is BBDXY. This is actually really good math on a weak dollar from the end of 2016, and down we go. Dr. Frenkel, explain to our audience worldwide how a weak dollar assists the Fed as rates move higher.
Well, you see, a weak dollar or nominal exchange rate has 2 characteristics. First, it has a nominal effect, and thereby on the price index and the things that the Federal Reserve is looking at. In addition, in the short term, it also affects competitiveness, what we call the real exchange rate. And this affects real economic activities, but only in the short term. By and large, the Fed should focus on the nominal exchange rate developments to the extent that they affect the price developments into the future. I should say that we have had some confusion during the past few years. You recall in the old days, during President Nixon's time, when Secretary Connolly said, the dollar is our currency and your problem, that's the way he approaches the European. Thereafter, sequence of Secretary of Treasury spoke about the importance of a strong currency for the United States. And then recently in Davos, Secretary Mnuchin mentioned something that a weak dollar may be good.
Yeah.
I think that the whole issue is that the objective of the Federal Reserve should switch away from the dollar towards price inflation, price targets, price stability, and the like. The dollar is a result, a reflection, is the thermometer of what it does, rather than the objective of economic policy.
Jacob Frenkel, very quickly here, what a remarkable thing to have the leader of France, the leader of Germany, both attending Washington, literally in the same week. Really quite extraordinary. What should be their message to Mr. Trump on trade?
Number one, we are here together because we are in a multilateral setting. Please, don't set your economic policy aimed at bilateral. Second, there are unintended consequences. If you aim at China, remember that the EU is an important part of the economic system, exempt us. Third, if you aim at China, remember that the value chain is very complex, so if you hit China, you also hit your own allies whose products are inputs into the products of China, like South Korea, like Taiwan, like Japan. Bottom line, communicate, don't shoot. Go ahead, send your Secretary Mnuchin, let's diffuse that issue. We are all in it together, and let's deal with it in this togetherness of multilateral setting. The markets will see this as a big boost because the markets know that we are in a multilateral system. The markets worry when policies are done with a bilateral eye. And therefore, it will be the best message to the market, not only because they will realize that protectionism is now recognized by the authorities to be a bad policy instrument, but also that it will reflect a broader issue. Because the geopolitical setting today, it's not only North Korea, it is so many areas of the world require a multilateral approach. And if you break the multilateral rules for one part, you also prejudice the ability to use multilateralism in another part of the setting.